right. Well, good afternoon. Happy Friday, everyone. I call the meeting of the March 2026 SKIP Executive Board meeting to order. And Dorsal, will you please call roll?
Yes, ma'am. Nancy Backus.
I am here.
Dana Ralph.
Here.
Liz Steed.
Here.
Christina Soltis. She let me know she is on the way. Gene Axinger.
Here.
Brian Davis. He also let me know he was running a little bit late. Councilmember Victoria Stroff is here. Eric Zimmerman.
I'm present.
Carmen Rivera.
Here.
James Lovell.
I know he said he would be a few minutes late too.
Dennis Martinez.
Here.
And Jelani Jackson.
Right. Well, wonderful. So as we know, roll call also serves as the introduction for the executive board, but if there are any others in attendance, we would love to hear from them as well. And I believe today we are joined by Brady Nordstrom, a member of the SKIP Advisory Board and Housing Development Consortium, or the HDC. So Dorsal, would you recognize any staff working group members that we would like to have introduce themselves as well?
Yes, ma'am. Starting in the public attendees, we have and then also a staff work group and SOTIO member, and supporting us today with some of the IT work. We have
Owen Good, planner 2 with the City of Auburn in the Community Development Department.
Thank you, Owen.
and hidden in the back supporting audiovisual, we have Jason Jones from the City of Auburn as well.
Hi, Jason. Jason rocks.
From our online attendees, Anya, would you like to say hello?
Hi, afternoon, folks. I'm Anya Zupancic. I'm the Human Services Manager for the City of Biennial, and I serve on the staff work group.
And Matt, would you like to say hello next?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Matt Torby, Community Development Manager, Staff Work Group, in support of Councilmember Schroff.
And Michaela, would you like to introduce yourself? If you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Not yet. Hi, Michaela.
Okay. And we do have 2 SKIP panelists. I apologize. Happy to help change your name, but just want to give you a second to say hello if you're a staff worker member.
Angie Mathias, City of Renton, Long Range Planning Manager, also on the staff work group supporting Carmen Rivera.
Hello, this is Laurel Humphrey, staff work group supporting Councilmember Martinez.
And I changed my name and I added myself. I'll go too. I'm Kayleen Nobis, the interim planning manager for the city of SeaTac as well.
Can I just say hi, Kayleen?
Hi there, Ralph.
What a happy surprise. All right. Is that everyone?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to our meeting, and thank you for taking the time on this rather wet, gloomy Friday, but I understand the weekend is going to be better weather, at least fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, because I think we all deserve it. Let's move on to public comment. This is the time on the agenda for public comment, and if you'd like to make a comment and are attending online, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. You'll have 3 minutes to make your remarks, and when you do, please state your name and city of residence for the record. Is there anyone online, Dorsal, that is looking to make public comment? Do we have anyone in the room that would like to make public comments? Anyone in the room? I am not seeing anyone, so we will move past public comment. On your agenda, it says potential executive session. We are not going to have an executive session today. because we could not, under current circumstances, identify a way to legally do that. So I do want to give you a bit of an update. I think most of you, if not all of you, have received a couple of written correspondences from me in the last 10 days or so regarding Claire Goodwin. So I'm just going to read to you comments. So this is to let you know that Claire Goodwin has separated from employment with the City of Auburn, which currently serves as the administering agency for South King Housing and Homeless Partners, or SKHHP. Claire's last day of employment was March 12th, 2026, and the separation will be characterized as a resignation. As with most personnel matters, there are limits to what we can share regarding the circumstances of an employee's separation. The city and Ms. Goodwin have entered into a separation agreement intended to resolve employment matters and support her transition to other employment. Consistent with that agreement, the city will confirm dates of employment and position held in response to any reference inquiries. We appreciate Claire's work supporting the SKHHP partnership and wish her well in her future endeavors. In the coming weeks, the city will work with the SKHHP Executive Board to ensure continuity of program operations and to discuss next steps for leadership and program administration during this transition. At this time, Dorsal Plans will be the acting manager until a permanent replacement is selected. And please feel free to contact me if you have any additional questions. As mentioned, it's a little difficult for employment issues to share a great deal about this because of the separation agreement. But we are in fine hands with Dorsal taking on this role, at least in the interim. As with any time that we are hiring, the board will do the interviews and the final approval. Right, the city may bring forward who they would recommend, but it will be the executive board or the board that will make the motion to hire the next executive manager for SKHHP. So we'll give you a timeline when we have that. HR will open up the process and do all of the recruiting and the first look to make sure that you'll only receive information on those that are qualified to be in the position. And I will keep you posted on that process as we move forward. Any questions on that? Dorsal has been doing a great job in the role. And so, Dorsal, I just want to say thank you to you for stepping up and stepping in to take this on, because I know your passion for SKHHP and the work that's being done. So greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
And we will move on to the approval of the February 20th, 2026 meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve? So moved. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the approval of the February 20th, 2026 minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Say no. The minutes are approved. Dorsal, do we have any agenda modifications today?
No, ma'am.
All right. Under board business, so we have an icebreaker today. We've set aside a few minutes. This is an opportunity for us to connect as a group. Some of us online today, some of us in person, and we have one new member today, so we're very excited about that. So these icebreakers are to ensure that we can collaborate more effectively as we align our goals for the coming year. Dorsal, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. We will be playing another round of SKHHP Bingo. We played this back in 2024, but thought it would be a good opportunity to just bring it back since we have some new board members. I am attempting to balance the virtual and the hybrid environment. So if you are a virtual attendee, you should have received an email that is a Microsoft Teams link. for you to join that meeting space. And I will connect you via that device with some of our in-person attendees. And we'll see hopefully if that works. And if it doesn't, we'll try a different thing the next time. But this bingo is just an opportunity to really just go around and get to know each other. I used publicly available information about all of you. So if anything on here surprises you, let me know and I'll tell you where the source is. But there are a couple of squares that are just in one specific board member, and there are a few that'll apply to a few board members. But I will hand them out. If you're a virtual attendee, you should have received a electronic version. And if you have not, let me know and I will send it to you right away. I was worried if I included these in the agenda packet, people would start early and get all of the answers. And let me get the virtual environments open. And we'll just take about 10-15 minutes to try and get to know each other and learn from each other before we get into the work stuff.
Is working while holding couple off, does that imply that you don't work while you're?
That's right. That kind of answers one of these.
There's one group. If they don't, yes.
Okay.
The three of us?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And then
I guess so.
Hi there. I'm Victoria Schroff.
Oh, you do? Well,
And we're
King County.
wonderful to have you.
Says you lobby, oh, Dennis, admit all.
There we go.
How's it going, Dennis?
okay.
So you got me and, oh, shit. I don't know how to use iPhones, Dennis.
So Dorsal, when you say serves on another government board, what are you referring to?
could be something like the KCRJ governing board.
Dorsal, I am new to iPhones.
But yes,
And I locked your phone.
Oh,
Send your code.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, so that may work for next time.
Faces are not similar for it to just. Maybe if Thomas McLeod was here, I could open it.
can you see us or hear us?
no, it's,
Did I lock it?
oh, okay,
That would be.
Hi,
Hello.
can you hear us?
there we go.
I can hear you.
Sorry, Dennis.
Next.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, Carmen is coming on.
That
with
was
us as
volume.
well.
Yeah.
There we go. Can you hear us, Carmen?
Okay.
Now we're good.
You wanna come
Perfect.
over this
Okay.
first, or-
So we, Dana and I had just started on this, so I don't know, do you both see your bingo cards?
I'm Jelani Jackson from King County.
Okay, good. So the first one has two separate
scenario
master's
with-
degrees.
You too.
And Liz? Oh, nice.
Dennis, you see, it's city council.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So what are your
No,
two?
it's okay.
degrees?
An MBA and a master's in management and leadership.
Oh, nice.
So how about you?
I have a master's in architecture and public
All right.
administration.
Nice, very nice.
So
Okay.
I'm wondering if we all have that top also serves on another government board, is what this kind of counts.
So we're supposed to.
I don't know how,
Yeah.
Three in a row,
row, okay.
diagonal, straight, or across.
and are we racing against the other teams over there?
Kind of, yes.
Okay, let's get this. Okay. So,
Yeah, certainly that top one.
we not have two separate master's degrees. We don't have a single master's degree. You have a,
So also serves on an.
how many master's degrees do you have, Dennis? Okay, so let's not focus on top.
I'd say
I mean, is it PCO?
this.
It's all elected office.
So Carmen.
It's a little cheap.
Council. We've got.
We'll have an elected PCO. Well, what do you do?
So when you say another government board, do you mean other than this one?
Yes.
Okay, so
No, no,
other
no,
than
no, no.
this one.
Held is, it doesn't say
That's
elected
held.
to.
Oh, that's true.
I think being appointed could count. Getting
It's held so
close. So I'll put you.
also, this would be.
Part of the fun of any game is finding loopholes.
Right.
That's-
Yeah.
That sounds,
It's not a college
yes,
level course.
yes, so has held more
Teachers
than
now.
one public office.
I've spoken to college level classes, even
Yes.
recently, you know, Dan Wise.
And I think there
Yeah,
are
I spoke to Dan's
others.
social
Oh,
work
right
class
on.
just 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
But I wouldn't call it.
So that gives us.
Since they
Yeah.
learned nothing, it'd be a stretch for me to say I taught it.
Yeah, I'm a field instructor with the
Can we get-
University of
do we get more
Washington, but
credit for a
that's not
blackout?
teaching a course.
Yes,
Dennis, you seem like a Kiwanis Club kind
I
of.
was worried blackout would take too long, but I'm getting the sense that
Yeah.
Planning commission.
Okay.
Very nice.
Fifth generation.
Also, I heard you go to St. Thomas.
Fifth generation resident of Kennedy County.
I ran into Father Tan from the Vietnamese Martyrs Church when I was at the airport out to NLC.
This one I don't know.
He said he talked to you before. You know, they're always looking for little fence adjustments.
He's taught a college level course, Carmen.
So we don't have an active member of the Kiwanis Club then?
No,
Maybe.
negative.
This is definitely not.
Someone else. Maybe we've got someone with
We
two
don't have one
masters.
across.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'll bet you Eric has a master's.
Yeah.
Is working while holding public office.
Are you implying that we're not working if?
Oh.
Hey, Eric.
no, I was like, do I put second job? But then what does that suggest?
It's also qualified.
Eric, how many master's degrees do you have?
Yeah. Fine.
1.5.
Damn it. We're looking for someone with two and I don't have a single one. I'm coming up.
What are we trying to fill? Cause I can,
You have to be talking to the leader.
the generation King County
There you
resident.
go.
There it is.
Right there. That'll help. What about working while holding public office?
Yep. Do you know any?
Committee of.
Committee
We have a
They have to be.
3
Yeah,
in a row.
right on.
Thanks for giving us Eric. Otherwise we'd be toast.
City planning.
Dorsal saw us struggling and sent Eric in.
So who's the youngest city planner of the year in another state?
I feel like I should give that one as a free space because that person is not here, at least currently.
Yeah, give it.
Brian Davis was
Brian,
named
sure.
the youngest city planner of the year in the state of Oregon.
Okay.
That gives us
Okay, then we have everything
Brian
with
Davis.
fifth generation.
He's
Yeah.
There's one board member that I know of that qualifies for that, and unfortunately, I've put you at a disadvantage by dividing the group.
qualifies for which one?
The fifth generation resident.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll go back to
You-
far.
I'll give you a hint. Normandy.
Eric.
Subtle
Yeah.
hint. Subtle hint.
Yeah.
We did the blackout then.
There you go.
God, who's got the 2 masters?
Yeah. Oh, okay. What are your degrees in?
Have an MBA and a master's in management leadership.
Oh,
And
okay.
Liz. in
And
our
Liz
group.
has, yep, Liz in our group.
That's Dana. Yeah, Dana's got a MBA in management leadership. And I think Listed also has a couple of masters.
Liz is architecture and MPA.
Administration.
Okay. Planning.
And who's the Kiwanis member?
Yeah.
Dana.
All right.
Active is a loose term currently. I'm a dues paying member if that
Okay.
qualifies as active.
Your skip bio still describes it as active. So I should mention that too. Like if any of these things might need updating, like it's a good reminder of like visiting our bio page on the website and seeing.
We should probably do that once a year. Ask everybody to review their bios.
It's a good creative writing exercise. for
It is,
guys to
yeah.
make stuff up.
See if they figure it out.
Just to give the bingo games.
Yeah,
some
of
spice
course.
to it.
I think we've completed bingo, so
That was fun. Thank you.
And this worked well. Nice
Yeah.
solution.
I will collect my devices really quickly. 'Cause I am signed for all
Well
of these.
done. Well done, Dorsal. Well done.
I'm gonna close the team rooms now. Thank you all for tolerating the, it's always good to start with a little bit on before you go to work.
Thank you, Marcel. It was a good time.
Yeah.
I won't.
I think it'd be better. I think it's easiest. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thank you, Dorsal. So we'll move on to item 5B, which is the 2027-28 biennial work plan and budget development. So every March we do this, when we convene in person and we begin development of our annual work plan and budget. And Dorsal has produced an initial draft of the plan and organized today's workshop to solicit further direction on the development. The goal is to have a thorough discussion regarding our strategic priorities for the coming year. And I know that we are never at a loss for those robust conversations. So I'm going to turn it over to Dorsal to get us started on that.
Thank you. And thank you all for the opportunity to present on the draft work plan. Really excited for the discussion we're about to have. Just a couple of quick notes. I did include a rough draft of the work plan in your agenda packet. There's both a clean version, which should be the first thing in your packet, and then also a red line version, which should come next in your packet after the minutes. And I also just want to provide a quick note. I am actively working on an update of the budget for the 2027 work plan and budget. I needed a little bit more time just to make sure that I had everything lined up correctly and was able to present it in like a way that made sense. So we'll spend a decent amount of our time at our April meeting reviewing the budget and having that conversation. All right. So before we get started, I thought it would be useful to just touch base really quickly on what SKIP's mission is. And that is to create a coordinated, comprehensive, and equitable approach to increasing housing stability, reducing homelessness, and producing and preserving quality, affordable housing here in South King County. That was a mission statement that the board adopted a few years ago, and it's what brings us all here together today. And so just wanted to root us in that as we look forward to our work in the future. Additionally, this is our purpose statement from the ILA, and this is the purpose that brings us all together, and that is to act cooperatively to address housing stability and to preserve and provide affordable housing for our neighbors here in the community. I think this last part is key, and I know it's something that each of you are living every day. We're here to support our neighbors and our community from South King County in a way from the South King County borderline all the way up to Seattle. And to date, your efforts have invested funding in over 700, I know I'm supposed to say units, but the kids in these pictures are going to call them homes. And that's what you've invested in, is 700 homes for our neighbors here in South King County. And that's the work that you've been doing and will continue to do. Here's just a brief timeline that SKIP staff will be using this year for the development of the work plan. So we're here today on March 20th with the workshop. We'll talk a little bit more about the survey results, and we'll get a little bit of feedback here today. That'll give us an opportunity to update the current draft that's in the agenda. April 2nd, I'll present that draft both to the SOHIO group and also to the SKIP advisory board, just to give them an opportunity to weigh in and give feedback. And then taking your feedback, the feedback from April 2nd, I'll then go to our invaluable staff work group on April 3rd, and that'll give them an opportunity to help me further refine the draft, which will then bring to the April 17th executive board meeting, along with the draft budget for your review and further just refinement and opportunity to just ensure that we're aligned and that we're representing the needs of each of your jurisdiction as you know them. And then tentatively, ideally, we will have adopted the 2027 work plan and budget by May 15th. I just want to make a quick note that the way the SKIP process works, we do need this year to adopt a work plan and budget by June. So we are a little bit up against some time, but I do think we have enough time to successfully develop the work plan. But just want to note that is, and since we've canceled our June meeting, that's why we'll look to try and adopt in May. Before we go too much further and review the staff results, I wanted to provide just some additional information and context as we go. And to start, I'd like to just put forward two recommendations that SKIP staff would like to make as we consider the development of the plan. The first is to defer the transition to a biennial process. This is because as we were reviewing the ILA amendment, we learned that there's a couple of things that are insurmountable, but it's not as simple as just removing a word or replacing a word in the ILA. There's a couple of factors that we need to consider in aligning our budget process with the county's budget process and ensuring that our needs and the partners' needs are met. We won't lose any of the work that we've already done. It's all stuff that feeds into that work, but by deferring, it gives us an opportunity to just ensure that we're doing it correctly, that the new ILA reflects kind of that transition in a smooth and secure way. And kind of tying into that, SKIP staff would also like to recommend that we defer staff expansion at this time. This will give SKIP staff an opportunity to conduct a more in-depth review of both our current and potential capacity. We'll be able to define a couple of scenarios and kind of look for a couple of options to present to the board as far as our growth path. And tying into that, and I apologize, this was not in the agenda packet I sent out last week, but it is available both in the packet in front of you and online. And just wanted to provide some additional context around the contract compliance component that we're looking at. Basically, you can see here on the spreadsheet the units that we are currently contracted for, or we have committed funds to, that we're in the process of developing a contract for. And you can see a rough tentative date for when those units will be online and ideally occupied by a resident. I do want to make a very quick note that the occupancy date is relatively tentative. As the project grows and changes, those dates do shift, and these dates have shifted since the memos that we prepared for the recommendation. So if they look different, that's part of why. But you can see the other thing I wanted to make a note too is this is the total unit count for the project, not necessarily the total unit count that SKIP will be required to monitor. So an example of that is the Habitat Millers Creek project. And that compliance work is actively going on right now. Yesterday, I was working with some of our partners as well as Habitat to do income certification for buyer selection. But of those 40 units, SKIP will only be responsible for monitoring 10 of those units. And so by the start of 2027, across 2 projects, SKIP will be monitoring 30 potential units for compliance. By the end of 2027, that number will be around 150 units, give or take how like that number breaks down based off of our other funders. And you can see the picture gets a little bit murkier as we go out, but potentially by the start of 2028, it'll be about 150 units that SKIP will be in compliance with. By taking more time, it does give us an opportunity to ensure that we're being good stewards of the funds we've been entrusted in, but also not duplicating unnecessarily other contract monitoring that's taking place. SKIP needs to, be a good steward of our funds, but we can also find ways to align. At the February meeting, there was some conversation around potentially contracting with a partner city or finding some other solutions for contract monitoring. And so by deferring staff expansion, the need is coming. As you can see, the unit count is definitely going to be growing rather high, but it gives us just a little bit more time to provide more information to the board. And then lastly, and potentially I put this one last just as a little bit of potentially good, exciting context. I wanted to share that at least 2 other South King County cities have expressed in the comprehensive plan a desire to potentially join the SKIP partnership. The city of Algona engaged in some initial conversations with SKIP staff back in 2024. And so there has even been some initial conversations that took place, but both Black Diamond and Algona do list in their comprehensive plan a desire to coordinate and partner with us. And so I just want to share that as we think about our future work plan and especially 2027. All right. And so here I'll just, and please feel free to interrupt if you've got questions. I feed really well off of questions. Also let me know if I go too fast. I have a tendency to do that. But just really quickly want to just call out the changes that SKIP staff have made in the draft work plan transitioning from 2026 to 2027. This is assuming that the board is okay with deferring the biennial process and developing just the annual process. The only item that was removed from 2026 to 2027 was facilitating an update to the affordable housing inventory dashboard. That would not go on the 2027 plan. The current plan is for it to be updated in even number of years. It is on the 2026 work plan to update the dashboard this year. So it would not be part of the 2027 work plan to update it next year. We did potentially add 2 items, and we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit more, especially about item 6. But there's kind of a placeholder, and I apologize if that's not your preferred style, but wanted to give an opportunity for feedback, further feedback. But there's a place for action item 6 to further kind of refine what could be a special focus area. In the past, as an example, Skip has done a special focus area on sub-regional preservation strategies through our SKHHP group. And so just want to mention that. And then I did put an action item 21 in the administrative goal section, so goal 4, that talks about evaluating staff capacity and establishing growth models. Some of that work has and will continue through 2026, but potentially just wanted to include it in 2027 so that you'd have that full report. And then lastly, there are a couple of items that have been modified. So action item 5, which has been on the work plan, which was to encourage investment in South King County by private investors, lenders, and philanthropies. I have tentatively suggested that we raise it from a medium to a high priority. There were survey results that we'll see in a minute that kind of talk about the need to do better public-private partnerships. And so it's changing it a little bit in name, but it's just helping to refocus Skip staff that growing our capital fund is an essential part of our work. Action item 15, we are alternating between years of hosting an affordable housing tour and a legislative forum. So I have modified it from 2026 to 2027 to note that we're doing a legislative forum next year. That said, I did receive feedback from Michaela Daffner, our staff work group member from King County, that pointed out that right now we're kind of in a weird place where we're doing our affordable housing tour before the long session and we're doing our forum before the short session. And it may make sense, and the board may want to think about switching them. It will be interesting, like, and I would look to your all's direction since we have the tour on the 26 work plan, kind of if we would want to like rethink about that, but I just wanted to note that. And then action item 20, I merely shifted from beginning and implementing to implementing and further refining the monitoring and compliance process for our housing capital fund.
Dana and then Victoria.
100% understand what Michaela's saying. And then the other side of that is if we are going to be doing a tour or the forum, it gets to be a pretty constrained time frame with every single member of the House up for election this year. So not knowing who that group is going to be that we're speaking to and half the Senate. So the opposite year does make more sense for engagement just because there's nobody up for election and we know who we're working with. So it just gets complicated doing something because you think end of summer or beginning, so it's campaign season for a whole lot of folks. Yes. As opposed to then Trump, but the timing doesn't allow us between November and January to get that work done either. So it's tricky in the election year cycle. Excellent point. Victoria?
Thank you. I agree with that. And in addition, I was thinking about the staff capacity because that did take a tremendous amount, I believe, of staff capacity during the forum. And while we're evaluating staffing needs and, we're in transition right now, that's another thing I was thinking is that maybe at least this year, even though it does make a tremendous amount of sense to flip it because of the legislative sessions, but it might make more sense to do the tour this year. James?
Yeah, I have a few questions, but some go back a few slides with the staff recommendations. It's pretty easy. Just, I think, a clarification. When you say staff recommendations, is that you plus staff work group, or is that at this point just your recommendation?
To be fully transparent, it would just be me.
Okay. And then similarly, the recommendation below, I was wondering if have you put any kind of defer alone sounds reasonable, but without knowing, is there any kind of a checkpoint we can put in so that if I were to support this and to say it's it's just generically abstractly deferred versus let's get 3 months under our belt and then revisit? Or is this part of the annual work plan? We will not look at this again for a year.
So are you talking about elevating the staff capacity? Is that going?
Evaluating staff capacity, because we're supposed to add staff and we're saying the recommendation right now is to defer the addition. How long do you want to defer for?
In my head, it was at least to the development of the 2028 work plan. So
So a 1 year
correct.
deferral, giving us time to rehire and then some period of time with still staying at that point at 2 staff. Right.
So there were differing perspectives about whether there truly was staff capacity currently or not.
Mhm.
And hiring a new executive manager, right, that things will change again, whomever is in that role. I understand and agree with what you're saying, because this is for 2027, we may want to, because we may want to expand, given that there are opportunities for more expansion of the work. So perhaps we need to word it in such a way that it will be revisited, or that we can amend later this year for the 2027. And I don't think there's anything that would keep us from amending the 2027 work plan, even in 2027.
Yeah, and I think that for me, first is just understanding this is a reference, this is basically agreeing to a 1 year, whatever it is we do, is okay, let's take a year.
Right.
But then within that, it would be nice to be able to see if it actually made sense.
Absolutely.
Without having to do like setting aside the rules and everything and interrupting the annual work plan. So maybe something about a 6 month or whatever check-in. I'll defer on that.
Dana.
Nice, I love that.
That is good, James.
Yeah, I am supportive of, the piece that was missing for me at our meeting last month was the in-depth review of current and potential capacity. There was a recommendation to add, but there was not anything combined with that I felt like we had enough to make a decision based on. So looking forward to that. And I think we need to get through this next couple of months and figure out the strengths that both of skip staff bring, and then do that review, and completely open to it being revisited at any point in time. That the piece for me was that in-depth review, and this is really where we need additional support, as opposed to, I think we need additional support. So. Yeah, having more data to support where those areas are, because then it matters even the skills that we're looking for to hire, if we hire additional staff. Where are those gaps? And until we have 2 people on board, we won't know where those gaps are. So if we could just make note to revisit at some point this year to make sure that we still agree for the 2027 work plan.
And spoiler for a little bit later in the presentation, but I've reached out to Lindsay Masters, the director at Arch, to come to our April meeting to provide kind of a little bit. It was a recommendation from one of the board members to have Arch come and talk about like their history and their growth. Of course, they're unique to matching the needs for a very unique part of East King County, but learning what we can do and how they grew so that we can apply it to our unique needs here in South King County. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions, or shall I? And
You're monitoring online questions.
I am trying, I am attempting, and Owen is helping me in the back. Yes. Couldn't do it without Owen today. All right. So now we'll just briefly go into a review of the survey. Thank you all for everyone who completed the survey. So we'll just quickly kind of go through the results of the survey. All right. So the first result we'll go over is the question, which was to eliminate what item would the board be okay with eliminating from a low priority item to potentially add additional items. At this time, skip staff is, or I am not recommending that we remove any of the low priority items from the work plan. I think that the work plan has been put in a place where we have an opportunity now to really kind of reflect on our capacity and kind of see before we want to remove other things from the work plan. But I did just want to share that information here. And the next question, and I felt kind of potentially aligned with that recommendation, was the question, and given the option, should we be doing other work than our low priority items? 75% of the survey respondents said that we should not. So it felt like the items that are listed currently on the work plan as lower priority items are items that SKIP staff should continue to do and work on. And the hope is that we can potentially add onto items instead of removing. So this is the result for the engaged in a special focus area, and it's the reason why I left space on the work plan, because it did seem like there was some interest from the executive board in pursuing potentially a special focus area in 2027. And I think our SOKIO group is an amazing opportunity and venue for that. We had 5 respondents who expressed an interest in inclusionary zoning, which was the largest category. We then had 4 respondents who were interested in density bonuses. And then we had 3 that were interested in leveraging public and partner-owned land. No board members expressed an interest, at least currently, in learning more about MFT or that being a special focus area. When we get to the interactive portion, I've drafted the special focus area language to reflect the inclusionary zoning piece. But it's one of several options, and as with everything in this work plan, it is just a very rough draft that I want you all to feel free to edit and change and add and subtract to. And then lastly, these are the specific topics that were suggested for speakers or presentations to be brought to the executive board in 2026 and 2027. There were some really amazing topics on here. You can see the lessons learned from Arch listed here. I took that out of the options for the interactive portion because we'll have them here in April. But you know, there's some really good and some really interesting topics. Just one thing. Homelessness and expanding long-term shelters in South King County were 2 separate results. I put them together because they thematically went well, and it helped make the slide fit a little bit better, but those were 2 separate results. Right. And then the last question, is there anything missing from the 2026 work plan that you'd like to see added to the 2027-28 work plan? Just to note, one of the results was a presentation suggestion, so I had moved that into the options for presentations. But these were basically the 4 results. 8 of the board members responded and said nothing needed to be added to the work plan. 1 board member put homelessness, and then we had a board member who mentioned changing goal 11. Which is our coordination with public funders to a higher priority, kind of in response to some of the challenges that we're seeing in our subregion. And then another topic suggested was building, expanding tiny home communities through workforce development. And now we will hopefully move to what is yet a slightly fun portion of the day. We are going to try a new technology for this, though. And I can assure you, while I have tested this technology multiple times throughout this week, we all know that technology can be a little bit stage shy. So hopefully it will work. This will just give us an opportunity to kind of capture in real time your results. You'll be able to see them as they come up on the screen, and we'll be able to just kind of talk and go from there. Your agenda packet has the QR codes. I also have additional printouts if they are needed. If you are attending virtually, I believe you have received the codes. I will also resend. Yeah. Now, the public packet does not have the QR codes. The questions are in there, but the QR code itself is not. Just because I didn't want All right. So the first question, and actually I can make the QR code appear on screen, so I'm going to do that and just politely ask only executive board members, primaries, or alternates if you're filling in, fill it out. But the first one is just a test question. So it's just to see if the technology works, fingers crossed. It's neck and neck.
Oh, Johnny. Oh, he chose the right one.
It's like, what's that anymore?
I was worried there would be one person in the room. I don't know if I can answer this question. All right, I see 9 responses. If if you're still needing a second, just let us know, but I think that worked for everyone. All right. So let's.
Does Renton technically go into East King County?
Stop it. No, they don't.
For Carmen.
Do you want to, are you trying to fight with me, James?
I'm supporting you. I'm saying it's okay if you abstain. It's just a thought. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize, Chair.
They identify as South.
I'll respect it.
South King County is best King County. I'm allowed to say that, I hope. For our first real question, not that the last one isn't real, but should Skip staff prioritize efforts to recruit additional South King County cities this year? There is some work that goes into it, but many hands make light work, and so it's some initial hard work, but it brings us a new partner and new opportunities to learn and engage. And I should mention, when I send out the minutes, I'll include the results of these surveys so that they're documented.
And it's scan each time, right?
Yes.
Yes.
We have 9 responses, which is what we had last time, so and we have 100% yes. Does this not reflect the way anyone feels about? Okay. It's exciting opportunity. Like I said, there's some initial work, but that many hands make light work approach is definitely true. All right, next question. So if staff has additional capacity and as is noted, Skip is in a number of different transitions, but my approach tends to be one where I would rather apologize for needing extra time than apologize for not doing anything. And so if we have additional capacity, which of these items would you potentially like to see included on the work plan? If these 4 items don't reflect the needs of your jurisdiction, I'm happy to have that discussion and conversation, but I tried to base these off of the survey results. And so if it's also not reflecting your answer, please feel free to let me know that as well. And some of the longer questions don't show up very well on the slide, but they will show up fully when you scan the QR code. So you should be able to.
Can you give us the QR code again?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. The 4 responses. We have 9 responses, which is, I believe, where we're at. And it does look like elevating action item 11 to a high priority to work collaboratively with public funders to increase alignment is the higher one in that category. I should say none of the other categories get deleted or disappeared at the end of this polling, but it just helps us guide us as we're thinking about what we can do next year. Does this reflect kind of the feeling of the board, or is there any?
Nothing else falls off then?
James?
Well, I'm curious what, I mean, I think, yes, I agree. And mine is in the higher percentage. But the two that each got, I think, one vote each, seem like ought to be rolled into a single thing if we do it. When we get to the point that there's capacity to do that, they're overlap. The Venn diagram is pretty dang close on researching any work you do to explore the expansion of tiny home communities would land under the long-term and short-term shelter.
And I was one of them in the 11. Mine was research and explore options to build and expand long-term and short-term shelter.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I chose that one is because of what the legislature has been doing for the last few years, and that unhoused Bill of Rights that was introduced again this year. Something is going to happen. I mean, it's going to be there long enough that something is going to happen. And
The sponsor has been very clear that it will be brought back.
So my thought was just trying to get in front of that and do something on our terms as opposed to waiting for the legislature to tell us what to do. So that was my thought behind my one vote there. But I love this way of voting on things. Isn't this nice to see?
Working really well.
Yeah.
A little nerdy, so having it actually visibly pop up has been a little fun for me. And I should mention, and that's one of the things I hope Skip staff will be able to better highlight. Like, so Keogh has last year we were doing some work collaboratively around the step housing ordinance and things like that. So even if it's not necessarily something that we can fit on the work plan, there may be portions of Skip that are trying to engage in that work or have started to work on that just a little bit as we work together too. All right.
Should I have asked a question on a previous one back then? Or
You can do it now if you want. Yeah.
Was it on the previous, we talked about should Skip prioritize efforts to recruit additional South King County cities. And it overwhelmingly yes. And I was just curious if there's CTAC is like landlocked or Skip locked as far as everyone around us. We're fully covered. Still willing to help, but I don't have the kind of natural geographic adjacency. That means I don't work a lot with Black Diamond or Algona. I don't happen to know any of the city council members there, whereas Tukwila, Des Moines, Burien, it's really easy for me to know folks there. So what help we could offer in that would be yours, but there's not a natural alignment. And there are lots of common issues, maybe based on population size, but I think a lot of other folks might be more natural. Just the adjacency thing seems like a more logical fit. Let us know how we can help. But it's bold of me to say, yes, we should do it, and then not really be able to volunteer the kind of like, oh yeah, we're an airport community. Well, they're not really, So I feel bad for volunteering others where it may make more sense, right?
Victoria and I can cover Black. Yeah. Valley and Covington, we're pretty strong. Yep, Tri-Cities.
Right. Yeah, you just have one.
Yeah,
A couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
And Black Diamond specifically called out Maple Valley and Covington as part of the comp plan too. So.
Well, and I would say with Algona, the Algona mayor is very much engaged in regional activities. On the SCA board, does a lot of work. So I think that also makes sense in wanting to be part of the bigger group, right? So, and there's typically a consideration that there are 13 South King County cities. It's usually SCA counts 13, AWC counts 13. And so I think regardless of what our work plans look like in the future, having more, if not all of the South King County cities just really gives us more of a platform. Yeah.
And then for our last question, and you will get up to 3 choices, and I apologize. new technology, so I'm still learning it. So it doesn't show on the slide again. It'll show up let me put the QR code up. It'll show up when you have the QR code, but this was my attempt to put the presentation topics into like a simple like agenda like description item so that we could potentially work to bring them to the board. And similar to other things, items that aren't like voted for, don't receive a high number of votes, they won't disappear. It'll just be the way that we structure prioritizing the meetings.
Dorsal for that, for the first one, the federal funding outlook, since there is some bipartisan legislation on housing right now that has passed the Senate hurdle but is being held up in the House. Are you considering that as part of this federal funding outlook?
Potentially. And I do have a briefing sheet that Arch sent out for the federal for that bill that I can send out to the executive board team.
Senator Warren is one of the. Who else was it? Senator Warren is part of that.
As part of that, yeah.
And it's definitely bipartisan. Yeah. It's passed the Senate, but the House is struggling.
And way back, right when I started at Skip, we did have a federal priorities sheet that we had developed and worked on, so. Right, we're up to 5 responses. Check the chat, make sure there's no. Up to 6. I'll give it a few more minutes. Did a prep Jeopardy like music to be playing along. We're still up to 6. So I will say there were some really exciting suggested topics. I'm really excited to see which ones we end up moving forward.
It's hard to pick just.
I had to put some like we only have 11 to 12 meetings in a year, so
It's for keeping us real.
okay. Oh, we're up to 11 responses now. Got people join us, I guess. All right. So it looks like we have a strong support for the state and local alignment. Oh, shifting again. Oh, we're up to 12. But it still looks like state and local alignment is still the highest category. And then we have ties on, or no longer a tie. And then we have inviting the new county executive, who I know has been including affordability in a lot of their talking. And then it looks like a 3-way tie between federal funding, the public-private partnerships, and crisis housing in South King County.
It doesn't sort them by popularity.
I thought it would. I thought it did in the testing, so I'm
It was
not
doing so well up until now.
right up to the finish line.
The denouement.
Right. I think we are now, yes. So thank you all for taking part of the interactive piece. I think moving forward, as long as the feedback's positive, we'll probably try and use that a little bit more just so that we can do the surveys kind of in real time and have the fun of watching it go. There's some other formats that I'll use moving forward for questions to, yeah.
I really like this. Yes.
Thank you. So lastly, I've just prepared a couple of questions to kind of create an opportunity or space to ensure that Skip staff is aligned strategically, that we have the right focus and we have the right prioritization as we think about our future work. And I'm happy to turn it over to the chair to help facilitate the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorsal. Okay. So thank you all for participating in the interactive portion. I do like that. And to be honest with you, I do like it better when we don't have to attach our names to it. That was, Dorsal was very kind in taking my request that we do it this way now instead of having to sign in and put your name on it. So, strategic alignment. When we're working on this 27 work plan, do the proposed actions accurately reflect the long-term housing needs of your individual jurisdictions? Because obviously there were differing opinions on some of the options that we just had. And I'm sure there were differing opinions, and I missed the February meeting, but I'm sure there were differing opinions there as well. So are we covering the needs of your member city or jurisdiction?
Yes, I would say yes. With the ability of Covington to do what it needs, and with the inability of Covington to do what it needs for those who need it, I would say Skip is filling a very big gap. It's reflective. And no, I don't think anybody here can say 100% to you, but does it fill the gaps? And there's no issues, and it definitely fills gaps for what we need. Yeah.
Anyone online? Have any comments? Does it reflect the long-term needs of your city or jurisdiction?
States as a whole.
Silence is going to be concurrence.
I saw some smiles.
Okay, then we have done a great job on strategic alignment. How about the next question then, feasibility and
Mayor.
focus? Oh, I'm sorry, Victoria.
That's okay. It was really more of a comment. I just want to say, especially lately, Skip has really factored pretty prominently in our conversations, council, as we are trying to do what we can to get affordable housing in our community. It comes up like every meeting. So yes, you are serving our needs, I believe, and will continue to. So
Excellent. That's great to hear. Thank you. All right. Next section, are there specific barriers to housing supply in South King County that you feel are missing from our current work plan? So current, our 2026 or upcoming 2027, either one. Yes, James.
Yeah, and I'm actually gonna ask first, is there anything in here about rising development costs?
Not in a strong open way, no.
Okay. That's not necessarily commentary on like we need it as much as, I mean, it affects the entire industry, it's affecting any capital project, all of our CIPs, all of our TIPs, like everyone's stuff is being affected by this, regardless of you're just south of the urban core or if you're miles and miles from the urban core. So I don't know that it actually needs to be in here because I think it's a diverse enough, the kinds of things that are affecting it are big enough. They're also different based on where you are. If you're in a denser part of South King County with a lot of competition for the limited land that's available because your city's mostly already built out versus, you know, there are still very high development costs, but it's different when you're in a dense part where you're, you know, digging up old laundromats and gas stations and having to go through remediation versus folks who are having to be the first developers ever on a hillside or a slope, right? So, and both are expensive. Remediation is expensive and moving dirt is expensive, but not in the same way. So I think that's a part of the feasibility though, that affects everything. But so I don't know that it needs to be here. It affects every time we have a new conversation around affordable housing, CTAC, at least I know cost is the big thing. I know we had MFT on here and the, opportunity there. I'm also glad it didn't make it through as one of the priorities in there. I guess I'm just acknowledging it and it's missing, but maybe does that sound right that it's missing and it probably doesn't need to be on here? Or do folks feel like you want to add it?
I kind of see it in a lot of these, state and local alignment from policy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some things, it's kind of like those unfunded mandates.
Mm-hmm.
Every time the state decides to change what housing requirements are,
Mhm.
usually adds to the cost. And the one thing then they do is they look at counties and cities to say, well, you shouldn't be charging so much. You should be not charging permitting fees, or any of those types of things, when in fact it's the cost that the state has then applied to building a home that's really the large increase, right? But we all still get looked at as the ones, oh, well, we should be doing more. We shouldn't be charging people for that, when most of us aren't even recovering our costs, but we're trying to do some. I think it was back in 2017, there was, and I'm not even going to remember the right legislation that went into effect, but there was something that if you were not vested at the end of, I think, 2016 going into 2017, the cost of an individual unit went up by about $17,000. So we tried to work as closely as we could with all of our developers and say, if you have it in by this date, we guarantee that we will have it approved for you by the end of the year, so that those costs don't go up. But that was a state mandate, right? On something, it was environmental, obviously, but there are so many things that impact the cost. And I think we could probably look at federal funding, state and local alignment, cost-effective construction, all of those kind of touch on what you're saying. And maybe we put it under an umbrella, right? So just cost. And there are a lot of things that can be broken down underneath that.
Yeah, that works. It's just something for us.
Yeah, no, it was
and
great.
I know it shows up in their ears. Sometimes we don't see it coming up until it's too late. I'm glad you got out ahead on that one, especially.
We don't maybe take all of the pieces and understand them together. We look at one, but we forget over here that there's something else that's going to be impacting that cost. So I think having that umbrella might be a great idea. Dana?
That is exactly what I was thinking when I chose strategic the alignment with the legislature, whichever one was that.
Oh, yeah.
Because it feels like for the last couple of sessions in particular, housing crisis, more requirements on building housing. Housing crisis, build more faster. We're going to make it more expensive. It feels like we have seen so much legislation come out that is in conflict. And separately, all good things, environmental protections, energy efficiency, like none of them are bad things, but they also are costing so much more money. So then we're not getting the housing built. And I have yet to see conversation at the state level of figuring out, we have to prioritize one or the other. Either we're going to say we're going to build all of the units that we need, or we're going to add more and more regulation and make it more impossible to build. And so that's the cost is exactly where I'm at. And these are things that I think that I should know all of them, but we're looking at building an ADU in our backyard for one of my sons. Middle housing, right? We've all done all these amazing things. Cities passed all of you only have to have one water meter. Well, I learned this week that to hook up to sewer, there's two charges from King County. There's a capacity charge and a connection charge. So it's $30,000 just to hook that ADU up to sewer. that I found out because we're on a dead end and there's more than 30 houses, we have to sprinkler the ADU. So it's that those kinds of things are here. We're ready to do this thing that everybody is in agreement
us to do.
And all of a sudden, we're at $500,000.
Hmm.
So does it make sense to build an ADU in the backyard? And they're not paying, you know, he's not paying for the property because it's my backyard. So big untangling those conflicts, which are absolutely resulting in cost, to me feels like something that
Each of them good on their own, like
they're
you
all
said.
separately, they're all like life safety. I'm all supportive of that. But does sprinkling the only way to get that? Have to have sewer, but does that mean that we have to pay $30,000, you know? And then things like pervious versus impervious surfaces. There's a possibility that we're gonna have to build a retention pond. I'm not gonna build a retention pond but if we put a paved driveway, which it's just all of those things, right? And so individually makes a ton of sense. Collectively, it makes it impossible to build something.
Go up another floor on your garage.
Well, so we're looking at the other alternatives, exactly. So, but we've done this, like, look at us, we made it really easy. Telling you, I'm spending a lot of time in our permitting office.
But
Yes, yeah.
that, and like what you said, and if it's in a dead end or if it's in a cul-de-sac or whatnot, those regulations didn't exist. Just, you know, the sprinkler system, the necessity for that, just a few mere years ago, but now they do.
Yeah, every year it
And
feels like
and
one
every
more
year it's
thing
a
being
a
added.
bigger
Yep.
track. We just had the pleasure of building a home in Covington as well. And oh my God, 5 years. It took 5 years, one house. Pervious, impervious, you're speaking my language. And it's been impossible. It was an impossible task that we did absolutely everything that we could to make possible. And it's not everybody's going to do that. The property was sold several times simply because somebody could not do that. And it's just this constant, do more, you can't do that. Do more, you can't do that. And I hear you, Claire, and it's frustrating. So I'm so in agreement.
And it's one thing for developers, right? I know your cities probably we meet with master builders on a quarterly basis. It's one thing for the developers who understand all of the regulations. But for the individual homeowner or the individual who purchased that piece of property and wants to build, it's a nightmare. I don't know how anyone would continue on.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you have people that you can go to. We all have people that we can ask. And hopefully we have great employees working that are willing to help. But that's one request amongst many. And I don't know that any of us have enough staff to where we could say that we could hold an individual home builder's hand throughout the process. It would be wonderful if we could, but we have created such a nightmare with all of the permitting and the mandates that how do we get people into affordable housing that want to do it on their own, or market rate housing that want to do it on their own? You've made it almost impossible.
Yeah, for the individual homeowner who wants to build an ADU, it's quite the process. I know Seattle, and it's not trying to sort of the Seattle thing, but they did have a sort of a, hey, here's 10 options for your ADU, sort of a menu, pick one. Yeah, exactly. It streamlines.
It's about that much of it. That's the struggle, right?
Yes, but there are other hidden fees, costs, things to negotiate. You need to learn how to speak permitting, and there's a lot to do there. And without some sort of easy way to bring individual homeowners in, or even people who own a couple of properties, to sort of make that easy for them, it's quite the process. And frankly, some of my property developer friends at the end of the day, it's $350,000 to build an ADU now. And a year or two ago, they were quoting, $250,000. So those costs are significant. The other costs I think we could potentially talk here is for apartments or sort of supported housing, that sort of thing. Workforce costs tend to increase. It is increasingly difficult to hire and retain really quality staff, especially if you're trying to bring in real expertise into those buildings, people who have degrees who can actually provide the clinical work that needs to happen. So insurance and what is just through the roof for our providers. And so it's a real sort of downward pressure on also bringing in new operators into the affordable housing space.
I know it's not on our work plan, but I was just thinking, and I'm not trying to add anything to it, but wouldn't it be, I think it would be fun, maybe at some point, to be able to put on a workshop for individuals who are interested in either building an ADU or building on the, a single property, bringing some of the experts together and help them understand how to navigate and what is the language that they need to speak? What are the main words that they need to understand when they go in to talk with permitting or planning?
And
I think that would be a great service if we could ever do that to provide to our communities.
And again, not to focus too heavily on Seattle, but as part of that too, they're in the process tentatively of developing a plan to work with low-income residents, and because they noticed with this ADU issue, there's becoming a challenge now where there's potential displacement because the family can't afford the ADU that they thought that they would be able to afford. And there's now a person willing to come in and swoop up the property at low cost because they do have the resources. And so Seattle is looking at a program where the city will use funding to basically help with the establishment of the ADU. It will be used for low-income rental as part of the partnership with the city and the property owner. And after, I believe, 10 years, the property owner then assumes full ownership of the ADU. And so be happy.
Like a mini LIHTC?
Yeah.
It's a little loan that the city is now giving you, right? Not the bank.
Yeah, they're fronting some of the capital to get it going, and
Well-
you stick with the commitment for a certain amount of time, and then
I get that. Paying
they're out
back
as the
as
investor. Yeah.
As an investor.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah, there's private versions of that exist in South King County as well. And I think that's the unfortunate struggle, is that people go in, they see something that says, I can do this for $150,000. That's really reasonable. My family can manage that. And then it's oh, wait, there's this, and oh, wait, there's this. And then by the time you're through, and then financing is hugely challenging because you're not just going to be able to finance something on property that you like. All of those things get very, very complicated. And I think my continued struggle is that so in addition to helping homeowners understand that better, figuring out a way to help our legislature understand that there is a bigger picture. And when they're looking at legislation, looking at it in a holistic way. We had this conversation about tree preservation at our council meeting. I love trees, but if you want density, the reality is trees have to come down. So if you have a tree ordinance that doesn't allow the trees to come down and you're allowing for density, one or the other has to happen. And so got to be able to balance those conversations. And it feels like so much of the legislation that we have seen is in conflict. I think about parking. We already have so many multi-generational houses. There are already 5 or 6 cars. You then add an attached ADU or 2 ADUs if detached in the back, and now you have 9 cars in the footprint of one house. But you can't take that into consideration because we're not allowed to consider parking. But you're also more than 15 minutes from reliable train, like all of those things. And so just figuring out how to have a holistic conversation and getting our legislators to think in that, because I don't think there's any jurisdiction that does not want to provide housing. Like I have yet to come across a single place that says, we don't want to do this. At least in this world, right? The part of it's gotten to be impossible. And I find myself more often than not being in opposition to housing legislation, but it's because I have this running checklist in my head of what the impacts are going to be. And it's a struggle.
My goal is to next year have legislation that I am in support of.
Yeah, it'd be a wonderful place to be.
Instead of having to be
Love the
against
optimism.
most legislation.
If I can take a moment of privilege too and just proudly proclaim the Sokio group and just the opportunity I've had over the last couple of years to watch them dance through these changes that changed something that they literally just finished 6 months ago. And you have some amazing planners that are really dedicated to this work and just they've been doing their job to dance through. these changes.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, is there anyone online that wants to jump into the conversation? See no one. All right. Moving on then, do we have anything else under the feasibility and focus that anyone wants to chat about? Not, we'll move on to the prioritization. So which of the items do you think would have the greatest impact to your community?
Are we talking about the entire work plan or just the new items?
I'd say the entire work plan, but happy to.
Right. I'm a little confused. Do we, as part of all the goals? And the sub goals and the action items on the goals?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be one. The answer hopefully is all of the above,
Right.
but you know, we have really diverse cities, so yeah. The main goal really is to just as a check-in to understand that we're accomplishing and prioritizing what is helpful for each of the members.
James?
Yeah, I kind of forgot about the column to the right there, which shows the prioritization that we've all agreed to already. And as I was reading through them, I was looking at, I was like, well, so far, page 1 is the one that seems the most sense. And then I looked back and remembered there's these thoughts. Page 4, I know this is a particularly sensitive time to recognize that operations here at Skip are going to be a little bit tight for a little while until we move forward with through the transition. But the second two, didn't really rank very high. It seems like this is the things that made sense just on a read are the things that made sense after we deliberated, and they still make sense. So if anything, it's kind of validating that those 5, and especially given the conversation we just had, I think there is also an appeal or a thought around the second page, just a little bit as we develop policies. I guess number 7 on page 2, because page 1 is like all 5 elevate all the way 100%. Page 2, carrying the momentum from the last conversation, whether it's land use planners or others who can collaborate, housing policy and planning, mitigate rising costs in regulation, land, and then just cost of material and labors, right? I think that's where, but recognizing that our local impact is going to be really only on regulation that ultimately, I think as we're acknowledging, kind of hurts us, is that we can only cut so much before other jurisdictions, the stack of regulations, costly regulations impacts them. That's the only one I would put up a little bit more than the first page, is thinking more about what, and knowing that the collaboration is really just about if there are best practices to be shared to help kind of limit, thinking of like the idea of some pre-designed plans for ADUs that might cut down a little bit of cost without hurting the city's ability to recover permit fees.
I'm seeing chats.
Give a shout out to the South King planners, definitely.
I would say these are conversations that we hope to just kind of keep having throughout the year, and yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And if there aren't any other conversations to be had on that right now, and again, as Russell said, we'll make sure to keep this alive the entire year. Let's move on to item 5C, an update on the TWG award allocation. So they had previously been awarded $1,940,000 from the 23 and 24 Housing Capital Fund grants. In light of ongoing challenges, including funding gaps and the site's current for sale status, the board established specific criteria in November of 2025 for the potential rescission of this award. We will now receive a final update on the status of the project and discuss the next steps. And I'll turn it over to Dorsal for that.
Thank you. Just a quick update on the TWG project pending in Star Lake. So the item we were waiting here back from was TWG was applying for Amazon funding to attempt to add it to the funding stack. We have received confirmation that unfortunately the project was not awarded funding from Amazon. It's my understanding that there is hope for the project to move forward. It's currently listed, or it was a couple weeks ago, still listed as eligible to apply for state funding. TWG is no longer listed as the developer. It's merely listed as the project, I think in line with the fact that the project is now for sale. But this means that, unfortunately, we will be rescinding the award per the action of the board. And we will be adding that amount to the 2026 Housing Capital Fund. So I'm still finalizing the totals, but it looks like we'll have close to 1 million in House Bill or Substitute House Bill 1406 funds. And with this inclusion, potentially somewhere between 3 to 5 million available in House Bill 1590 funds. So, and I have already met with at least one developer who has expressed interest in applying for this year. And I just received another referral from our staff work group member and Federal Way for yet another developer. So that work will definitely be beginning quickly. So unfortunate news, but yeah.
Yes, but look at the opportunity that we get this year to fund some really great projects. Okay. Thank you, Dorsal. All right, we'll move on to the 2026 legislative update. And as we all know, the session is finally over. Every year, I think I hear, I can't believe they did that this year, and it just gets worse. But every time you think it can't get any worse, it gets a little worse. So Dorsal, with that fine introduction, I'm going to turn it over to you to share what happened.
All right.
Housing related bills.
It was definitely a very interesting year. It was a short session this year, but there was a lot of energy and a lot of activity despite being a short session. And I think as many people saw reported in the news, one item in particular had potentially what is one of the longest debates and could be the entire history of the state legislature from what I've been told. So it was definitely an interesting time this year. Just a quick brief review. This was the 2026 legislative priority for SKIP. We did modify the language a little bit over the summer, and we shared this legislative priority with all of the SKIP member cities to include in their legislative packet. And just as one final reminder, SKIP staff did not take positions during this legislative session per the direction of the executive board. So here is the legislative session timeline. As you can see, the arrow is well past the end of session. Thankfully, we got there. I did hear a brief rumor that there was some talk of extension, but thankfully they ended on time. So concerning the capital budget, at least as of 8:30 this morning, the governor still had not signed the budget. And there were some changes that were made from the governor's proposal and from the House version. It was the Senate version that ultimately seemed to reach the finish line. That meant that there's about 123 million that was added to the Housing Trust Fund. This includes 50 million for the development of affordable multifamily rental projects, 55 million, so actually a little bit more for the homeownership project, and 40 million for the Housing Trust Fund Preservation Program. included in the Senate version that has made it to the governor's desk. There was also about 20 million for specific projects. There's a couple of different projects located in South King County listed. One of them is the Mental Health Housing Foundation Steel Lake project in Federal Way that is part of the 2025 funding recommendations that we made. So mentioning that. One other thing to mention about this version of the budget, there has not currently been a statutory limit on the amount of funding that could be accessed to the Housing Trust Fund. As I understand it, the version of the budget that's sitting on the governor's desk waiting signature will actually create a statutory cap of $10 million. And so projects will no longer be able to access more than $10 million cumulative dollars from the Housing Trust Fund. From my understanding, like there was an unspoken 5 million that the Housing Trust Fund was using with the ability to do waivers and things like that, but it is now actually set statutorily at 10 million if the budget is signed. I do want to mention the House Bill 1717, which was one of the bills that I was watching very closely this year. It did not pass. It made it very far through the legislative process from the House all the way to the Senate. There are a number of bills that did not move forward this year that the people I spoke with, there was energy and support behind them. But as I mentioned in the introduction, there was some heavy floor debate on some specific bills that took up a lot of the time during the short session. And so some of these bills just simply ran out of time and are very likely to be brought back next year. So flagging that as well, it's been multiple years of very heavy state action on housing, and it seems likely that that may continue into the 2027 session. And then just quickly want to shout out Senate Bill 6026. This bill did pass, but it went through a number of changes. As I understand it, the current bill that passed does allow for cities to keep their commercial and mixed use area zones in a total of 40% of the area that is zoned for commercial or mixed use, with some listed exemptions. One of the ones that I think may factor in for at least one of the skip cities is if the commercial zone is in a tax increment financing area that was established prior to this bill passing, that will not count towards that 40%. So like you can ignore that piece and look at the other 40%. It does only apply to cities still that are over 30,000 people. And so it's not skip wide, but it does have a pretty profound impact. And I encourage you to talk with your long range planners to better understand how it might impact your specific city. Of the bills we were tracking that were connected to the Civic Commons Starter Home Production Plan, only the adopting national standards for factory-built housing and commercial structures passed this year. So that bill did move forward. The other two bills did not, unfortunately, but it's likely that some version of them will be brought back next year. And then I did switch up the presentation format. So now the bills that pass the legislature are presented first in the packet. They are still in order, starting with House bills going numerically up. And the status, if it has got the effective date, that means the governor has signed it, and that is the effective date of that piece of legislation. And the delivered to the governor, I think, is self-explanatory. Like I said, there's a lot of activity. So there's 3 total slides here of bills that were passed that are potentially awaiting signature. And then lastly, these are the bills that did not advance this year in the legislature for a number of different reasons. And so quite a few that you will see here as well too. As I mentioned, there's already talks of potentially bringing some of these back next in 2027. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Thank you, Dorsal. Any questions for Dorsal?
A lot to track. Thank you.
Yes, and you did a great job the entire session tracking all of these because they're no end to the creativity of which the legislature will bring something forward.
It was definitely an interesting process this year. Right.
Pages of bills not advancing. Can find a small win in there. Maybe that's it. Yes, Victoria.
First, do you know about Senate Bill 5938 concerning the foreclosure prevention? It didn't make it, but I just, I mean, do you know what that actually was?
Not off the top of my head. I could definitely get more information. One of the groups I've been attending, they were working specifically on that bill, so I could definitely get more information.
All right, well, let's move forward then to updates and announcements. I think Dorsal has several announcements he wants to make to the board. So Dorsal, once again, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, but I just want to reiterate, we have begun buyer identification support for the Millers Creek Habitat for Humanity projects. There have been buyers identified for about 5 units that we're currently reviewing their income certification for. And then there are still 5 more units that are available for purchase. Habitat for Humanity came to the SKIP Advisory Board earlier this month and brought with them advertising material and things like that for our advisory board to share out with their organizations to help identify buyers. And I will send out for the executive board a set of virtual tours. By the time we get to the affordable housing tour, if we do it later in the year, there will be people living in those homes, which is great, but it'll give you an opportunity to virtually tour either the 3-bedroom or the 4 bedrooms that SKIP invested funding in. And kind of in that same note, just want to shout out that myself and Dana were able to attend the Kent Multicultural Village groundbreaking ceremony earlier this week. Dana spoke wonderfully, and there's at least one picture on the SKIP social media page if you would like to see it. But it was a great opportunity, great to see so many people out for that groundbreaking project.
Fun to be able to shout out SKIP's involvement in that project. So.
I've got the April 4th on my calendar for Habitat for Humanity, the 40 home dedication celebration.
Yes.
Got that one on my calendar to go to in Burien.
And I think saying this thing, Arch has put together, it was put together for their executive board, but has put together kind of a 1-pager explaining the federal legislation that is occurring right now that has bipartisan support around affordable housing. And happy to send that out to the executive board for your information as well after the meeting. But I believe that is all they know.
Bipartisan, but sounds like not bicameral, right? We've got an issue with. We heard about it at NLC that perhaps one of the 2 bodies of Congress, the larger of the 2, but I won't name which body.
I will.
The House is having issues getting agreeing with some of it. Yeah.
Passed out of the Senate.
Yeah.
Similar to the light truck reform that was bipartisan for years, but yeah.
Oh God, how long did Count will have that? She had to work on that for
forever. She's done a fabulous job, I think. She's been a true champion. Any exciting news that any of our members want to share? Anything going on in your respective cities or jurisdictions that you would like to acknowledge?
I mean, I could share for CTAC, we closed on a property as a city that has been known as the Bullpen property.
Yes.
It's an old restaurant on International Boulevard. Had a fire, it's had a lot of other things going down. That site itself, long-term, we have not programmed out what exactly it will be, but it's adjacent to another property that we're building out. That's going to be our new International Village / Civic Campus / It's right next to a light rail. And one of the many things in that area will also be, there will be the development of housing there. Combination of public market rate and affordable in a multifamily setting. And so it's acres and acres of land that right next to a light rail station that we've taken our role as a city. No one wanted the Bullpen for a long time.
It's been, it's got to be a decade since it burned down.
At least it's been a blight, but it also, the parcel has a former laundromat on it. And so the business sector has just been saying, there's just it just doesn't pencil. So it was our role as a city to see if there was a way we could do it. And so it's part of this idea of, sometimes it's the actual housing that you see that's part of the victory. Some of it is, what can we do to spur development in the area. And there's already a Mercy housing project that's open. There's others underway. But the multi-use nature of this is gonna, I think, spur even more development. So it's on its way towards a housing win. It's definitely in a community and economic development win. But we suspect it'll be a housing win within however long it takes us to build it.
That's exciting. That is exciting. It's very exciting. My husband, we were driving by there, it's been probably a month or two ago. He goes, can't believe nobody's ever done anything with the bullpen. So now I can tell him it's happening.
On Tuesday, I'm going out there with, the whole get up and a helmet and a sledgehammer, and they'll take some pictures. And
Nice.
so if you want to see it before these guys get it, better get there quick. Not gonna last long once I get going.
No.
I don't think they'll actually let me touch the
I was like, what a fun day. I
Yeah.
totally joined him.
It's a post-session,
Yeah.
federal government shutdown, exercise and exerting our, getting rid of our energy. Yeah.
That's right. It's great news. Anyone else?
We have Dennis.
Dennis, yes.
Hey, just real quick, I just want to let everybody know that Tukwila just did a ribbon cutting or opening of our third tiny village in Tukwila at the church by the side of the road. This one is the third one, and it's a 40 unit, and it also is the first in Tukwila that is going to accept families. We're going to double up the units to help the families in our community. So it was rather unique, and we got to take a win anytime we can, because as we were talking earlier, things are so much. The cost of an ADU has just gone out the roof. I remember 10 years ago it was about $40,000 to $50,000 for underground infrastructure utilities going through. Now it's about 120. So I mean, we were just happy to have the church by the side of the road willing to donate their property, and the facilities is being managed by Lehigh. So anyway, that's just what's going on with Tukwila and trying to do our little part that we can. That's it. Thank you.
Are there any articles or anything on that, Dennis?
Yes, actually, there is a couple articles on it, and actually, our newly elected council member Stephanie Fain, she was there for the groundbreaking, and of course, Tom, our mayor Tom McLeod was there, and three of us from council. But we took a different approach. The city of Tukwila took a different approach. 2 years ago, our money was running out. Our timeline was running out, and we had a surplus of money from the immigration grant, and we shifted to purchase the units themselves, and then we set them aside for a agency to run it once the landowner, the church by the side of the road, got all his permits and everything in order. And again, going back to what Dana was saying earlier, it takes so long. You could be an elected official, and it's still going to take you forever to get a permit. But anyway, the nonprofit was able to get it. The church, and then we had the nonprofit take over, management of it. But there are articles, and I will have Laurel, our council analyst, send you guys a link to it. Dorsal and the board a link to it, just so you guys can see what it is, and maybe even reach out to Tom if you want to find out how we navigated that, how the city of Tukwila navigated allowing that third tiny home village here.
That's great, Dennis. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, not a problem.
Anyone else? All right, well, Joanne, we are thrilled to have you joining us. Thank you.
Happy to be here.
It's great that your first meeting was an in-person meeting, so that now we know how tall you are, because
Otherwise it remains a mystery for quite some
well,
time.
it does, because remember, the first in-person meeting, and I looked at, now I'm forgetting her name. Sonari.
Yeah, she's
And I
pretty
go,
tall.
wow, you're taller than I thought you were, Sonari.
Yeah, we made quite the duo whenever we would walk into a room together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we are thrilled to have you here. Any words you would like to share?
It's just a tremendous time of change in the county government, as I'm sure you're well aware, but the executive's working hard to hire folks and build out his team and also make decisions on the rest of the departments. And so things are progressing. I think there'll be some announcements shortly about DCHS, my department that I report up to. And so I'm looking forward to just getting to work, honestly. Excellent.
All right. Any other comments? Not, we are adjourned. Happy Friday. Happy, hopefully dry weekend.
Squirrel in the.
I know, I saw him
Jumping
dancing,
from,
yes.
just hopping back and forth between the branches.
That's the best